It's a nice sweater.
Isn't it great? It's
Yeah.
everyone. I've been wearing this sweater for like a week straight because everyone compliments it. And by the way, we are recording. And this is important.
Does it
That's good
smell?
because, huh?
Does it smell?
Uh, yeah, they've been complimenting me on the smell. They've been like, that sweater smells fantastic because I've been wearing it for a week. No, it's just I got it at Goodwill and it's alpaca, and
Nice.
everyone. I feel like quality. I don't know. I feel like everyone kind of secretly. Wait a minute. Streamer mode is enabled. Oh, whatever. If I close this. All right. Good. 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 Um. Everyone kind of. There's this saying that a YouTuber of my Red Letter Media. So Plinkett reviews are a famous, like, basically the invention of the YouTube video essay came from Red Letter Media and the Plinkett reviews, and they were about Star Wars, the Star Wars prequel movies, and when he talks about things in the movies, he says, "You didn't notice it, but your brain did," and I think that like,
Hmm.
and he's referring to things that people couldn't consciously describe, but like they know that something they detect something and it like makes them feel a certain way. And I think I've noticed like that is a big thing when you start wearing quality clothes and like dressing nicely and you go. I mean, I get all my shit from thrift stores, you know that, but maybe y'all are
I'm
viewers
starting
that.
to do that too. I'm a big fan. I got
Mm.
this shirt at a thrift store.
Oh, nice, nice. You're looking very
Bamboozled.
bamboozled. um, and I just think it's like when you pay attention to what you wear and you like check the tags and make sure that you find quality materials and um, quality clothes and you wear it, people, it's like the effect that you have on people is that like they didn't notice, they're not gonna like, if you ask them why they're interested in you or intrigued by you or attracted to you, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, because he's wearing an alpaca sweater, like, and I can, but like they notice these things, they you didn't notice it, but your brain did, is what I'm thinking of. And it's like they pick up on these things without being like super conscious of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who aren't aware of many things, like their brain takes note, but you and I notice what people wear, and I think other aesthetically oriented people do. It is fun to walk out well dressed with a good color scheme, and yeah, people who aren't the brightest, let's say, they do respond. Their eyes light up, and they're not sure why.
Yes, I've been it's I've been getting a lot of compliments lately on my vibe, like because I dress nice, and I'm not sure how to react to them because most of them, I don't know. It's nice. It's nice to get recognized. Get that recognition. It feels good, but a lot of times, like for instance, I walked outside my door in my building, and there was a girl who looked very, let's say, genderqueer, and definitely had a few extra pounds on her. And she's like, "You look really cute," and I was just like, "Thank you." I wish I could say the same, but in return, but I don't
Uh-oh.
know. There is something. It's like, what do you say when you're being complimented by someone who you do not even remotely have the same respects for? What are you supposed to say?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. Um, well, people used to dress well, like in the 40s and 50s. Like, everyone would wear color shirts and women would wear dresses. And, like, that may be in part because there just weren't as many choices, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm not obsessed with that notion either because I think that was largely just done out of conformity. I don't think people
it's like
I
a uniform.
Yeah, I don't think people are noticing the way I dress because I mean, I think they're just noticing it because it's distinct, because it's like a distinct, clearly a distinct effort. And if everyone was doing it, it probably would just be boring.
So are you trying to stand out?
Yeah. Is that
Why?
because that's because there's enormous utility in it. There's enormous utility and economy in standing out because it's um I mean, I'm an entertainer. It's like, we talked about vision last time, and I have visions of being an entertainer, and how do you entertain without standing out?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, think of Michael Jackson's wardrobe,
Yeah.
like distinct. Prince? Who
Yes.
else?
Someone told
That's
me,
about the extent of my pop culture
yeah,
memory
Michael
knowledge.
Jackson and Prince. That's pretty much all you
Yeah.
need. That's good enough. That's
Well, it's a good starter pack.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
are we going to talk about sovereignties that
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Unless you have another topic.
No, I'd like that topic. It's
Great.
especially considering I'm gonna want to talk at least to some extent about Julian Assange. Is the Julian Assange trial is happening right now, and that's
Really?
yes. So he's in a British court, and
I
they're
thought he was in Ecuador.
no, the Ecuadorian embassy was a while ago. That was like he was expelled
All right,
from
well
there
you
like
can fill everyone in. I don't know. I'm not following this. So,
I'm following it a bit, but we don't need to go in the nitty gritty because I'm too fucking stupid to even know the nitty gritty. So I'm not gonna pretend that I'm like super
I don't
aware.
think you're stupid. You're
Yeah,
probably just not,
I
you
know.
know.
I'm being deprecating, self-deprecating. But yeah, that's definitely relevant to the overarching theme of sovereignty.
Do you want to start there or do you want me to riff?
I want you to riff because it
Okay.
was your idea. Um, yeah,
Yeah. So from our first episode, you'd said something like, I'm just a person in motion. Like that's just who I am. And that's true. And so when the pandemic rolled around and everyone was being forced to shelter in place and not interact, not go outside, and not breathe fresh air and move their muscles, um,
well,
I was in Colorado that winter.
I wouldn't say they were being forced to initially.
Well,
It's like they did so
fair enough.
voluntarily initially, and then it just became a cultural norm, and then like the legal aspect of it started to emerge.
That's a good point. Initially, it was voluntary because everyone was freaked out. But
Mm-hmm.
then I'm like, that was forced. That
Mm-hmm.
fear,
Oh yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Regardless, there was a lot of like restrictions on movement, generally speaking, and that wasn't just taking place in this country, it was taking place all over, right? There were
mm-hmm.
travel restrictions in mass.
Right.
And so I remember that winter 2021, no, it was 2020. I'd moved back to Colorado and we endured a cold winter alone. And I was like, if I can't be with people in this cold and dark, like I don't want to live, you know. I got to that
Yes.
point. And so,
On the plus
um,
side, I did get you to listen all the way through from start to finish to "In Rainbows" by Radiohead
which is
during
like
that winter.
that album is a miracle, you know.
Yeah.
So I could ramble on. I'm gonna do the TLDR. I left for Latin America. I've found ways to be outside and engaging with people while people were hunkered down in this country. And it at first that move was prompted by, I'm not going to have anybody tell me I can't move and interact with others. And then it became, wait, if I live outside of the US for X amount of time per year, I don't have to pay income taxes legally on a certain amount of earnings. And then it became, I can get a residency in another country and legally have another place to go where the climate's better, cost of living's cheaper. And all of this kind of percolated into becoming a resident of Mexico. And I think we've talked a lot about over the years just the atrocities that continue to occur by the United States towards its citizens and the world writ large. And there's so much frustration and I think this like learned helplessness. And so when I think of sovereignty, I think of being able to leave, like being able to fly away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fight and
Yeah.
flight. You're able to flight. I don't know how else to put it.
What do I think of when I think of sovereignty? That's a good. We should defining
What do you
sovereignty.
think of? Yeah.
Um, when I think of sovereignty, I think of ability to say no, essentially, ability to reject the demands of others, ability to. I mean, I think it really just boils down to that. Um, being able to live with integrity. I think, being able to maintain integrity despite the challenges, the outside forces, attempting to challenge that. And does that mean and sometimes, yeah, I think being able to leave is part of that. I don't necessarily think that's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of sovereignty. Is like movement inherently. I think sovereignty over one's motion is certainly an important aspect, but it's not like. That's interesting that you but yeah, I just that wouldn't be the first thing that I would think of. I guess I'm curious where you for you to continue on that thought, like.
Sure. So, like, you think about any mammal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And its basal responses to threat. It has three. It can fight, it can run away, or it can freeze. It can play dead, like a
Mm-hmm.
mouse trapped in a cat's mouth.
Yes.
And I don't think that, I mean, amidst all our abstraction and hooting and hollering as humans, like, I don't think that we have other options besides those three basal responses to threats. So
So what's
I
wrong?
think,
So why not
hmm?
fight then? Why is like flight the first thing that.
Well, let's, that's a great question. What would we be
Or
fighting in our,
freeze, or alternatively, why not freeze? Why not
well,
sit in a
because,
cold apartment in Denver and freeze while the fucking world crumbles around you?
yeah, well, Colfax Avenue becomes this decrepit
Yeah,
fossil that it used to
wasteland,
be.
broken
Yeah.
windows, and crack-addled monsters.
Yeah.
Oh.
Where it used to be like bumping concerts, short skirts,
And
smiles, laughter,
it has not recovered. And I was,
diners.
we could talk forever about how I foresaw this, but hey, why would anyone listen to me?
Well, why wouldn't they?
Well, that's what we're trying to remedy here, right?
So let's explore fight. Who are you fighting?
Who who am I fighting, or
Well, who would you be
who
fighting?
would
I
we fight?
mean, let's say I'm just gonna assign this figure and call it like the United States government, which could be like the local police department up to the FBI or whatever group sits above them. It's like if I don't comply with their demands, there's going to be conflict. That will initiate in a legal setting, and if I don't comply with that legal setting, there will be violence, right? And that's what it all
Yes,
boils down to.
violence is
Is
the
like
ultimate authority.
monopoly on violence. Who said that? Someone important. Um,
Yeah, I don't know who coined that term. It's a common term. I mean, lots of people say it at this point, but I don't know who coined it. That might be useful
so,
information.
um, like after all of these lockdowns happened and people complied without, you know, without much question, um,
Not
without much.
not just without question, but with excitement, with like a sense of like missing purpose. Like
Yeah.
that people were attacking each other on social media. Like they were not just uh, without question, but embracing. It's not just that they weren't questioning it; it's that many were embracing it in a way that, like, attacking people that they had known for years on social media over, whether they, needed to spend that extra 5 minutes outside the house that day. Uh, that was delightful.
So people were eager to comply with something that was obviously not in anybody's best interest, right? So
Well,
you
it
got
wasn't.
like,
I wouldn't say it was
uh,
in nobody's best interest because,
well, I mean, nobody we know, nobody, yeah,
yes,
no real
no
person.
regular person's best interest. Yeah.
So people do that, and then, right, that's also being enforced by the United States government, and they say, hey, right, be a good boy, don't leave the house, wear your mask, and it's like, okay, I don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's conflict, and then you have to fight, and then that ends in violence. Oh,
Yes. Yes. If you fight, yes.
how are you going to fight the United States government? I'm not going to.
Um, I think there are ways of being subversive without being outright violent. It's like I'm not saying. I mean, I think your strategy was cool and dope as fuck because I got to visit you in Mexico, and I envy you in a lot of ways because I didn't do that. Um, but I also think that I'm trying to be delicate about how clearly I state certain things here.
For sure.
But I think there was value in what I did because it's like it essentially convinced me to fully go independent in my business,
Yeah.
and fully embrace my business independently, and learn to function in a way that's kind of under the radar. And I think that if there's a revolution to be had, it's really that. It's people just like developing themselves and developing under the radar, let's just call it, modes of operating that Uncle Sam isn't going to be able to pick up on, and just being able to barter and swap and trade and make do without Uncle Sam needing to know. And I think I've learned a lot about that Um, and I'm not saying that. I'm not even saying that there outright shouldn't be any violence implemented in the kind of change we need to implement. But I think that learning to kind of skirt the rules and operate independently is what a lot of people need. And I think that I've managed to accomplish that to a certain extent, and I'm proud of myself for that.
I'm proud of you for doing that too. I would then pose the question to you, what happens when you get caught?
Well, I don't know.
Right. And that's the issue, right? Because it's like, if you don't plan for that contingency, you run the risk of ruin. And that's not good for anybody.
Yes. What I've said before is just that, like, I have found something that I like doing. It pays well. I'm good at, and I'm appreciated for. And I can do, and I know that I'm doing, despite what certain elements of the federal government might think. I know what I'm doing is beneficial for the people that I do it for.
It is, without a doubt.
And if you're gonna try and take that away from me, then and if you're gonna try and take that from the world, then you're the fucking criminal, and go fuck yourself. And you're not gonna stop me. And
until they do, because they have the guns.
Yeah.
And they have the lawyers. And they have the prisons. And they
have the total lack of humanity.
Yes, they do. They have no humanity. That's what it means to be a high-level politician. That's an operating requirement. So, I don't mean to criticize your approach. I'm just saying, what's plan B? And, like, that is sovereignty, is having a plan B. You have a bolt hole. You have an escape route. If you don't have that, then, right, you run the risk of ruin. And, like, that's not something that one would want for themselves. And that's certainly, like, for people who care about you, right, looking and being like, well, fuck, I don't want anything bad to happen to my friend. I love and care for him and think he's brilliant. And, I couldn't imagine. So that all came from fight.
Yeah. What about freeze? Like, why? I'm trying to think of. Would there be an instance in which freeze would be the correct response?
I think so. Like, if someone has you held at gunpoint and they want, money or technology from you, it's like, you comply. You freeze. You don't try and fight. You don't try and run away. There's a gun in your face. That happened to me, right?
Well, yeah, let's hear that story again. It's an interesting story, and if we're not here to tell interesting stories, then what are we here for,
And what are we doing? I was in Guanajuato, Mexico, where I lived for 8 or 9 months. It was a 3-week-long festival, so everybody was drunk, everybody was sleep deprived. It was just chaos.
That was shortly after I left, right? This is the same festival.
That was after you left.
The same festival, yeah.
And I had
Semana Santa.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was like months later. You came around April. This was in October. So, okay, different. Yeah. Lots of festivals in Mexico. Great country.
They just love to party, man.
They live,
I want to say this because it was an observation that I made while we were there, and I think it's funny and interesting. Is that we have the inverse. Latin America has the inverse response to us in the sense of like busyness. So if you're to here, people are suspicious of you if you don't have enough going on. Like, let's say you're on a dating app and a girl's like, yeah, when do you want to meet? And you're just like, yeah, whenever. I have tons of free time. It's like 9 out of 10 chance you're probably just not going to hear back from her because she's going to be like,
Uh-oh.
why does he have so much free time? You know?
This is true.
It's the inverse in Latin America where like they're like, come on, have a cerveza, and you're like, I can't, I gotta work. They're like, well, what? This guy doesn't have time for us? Like he's busy with shit. Like what the fuck? Who does he think he is? Like, it's just funny. It's like opposite social response to. Anyway, but
It's true.
Tell your story. Yeah, I think it is. It's like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong? Okay, here it's what's wrong with this guy? He doesn't have anything going on. There, it's what's wrong with this guy? He doesn't have time for us. Like what? He doesn't have time for a cerveza. Like who does he think he is?
What, does he have to go to work?
Yeah.
Like, early? God.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
that Mexicans don't work. I mean, it's just different orientation.
What if the ones that want to come here? You know?
Well, yeah, and they make American society function, for God's sakes. I mean, yeah, who grows food, who cooks food, who cleans, yeah, it's all Latin Americans, and like America wouldn't function without that. Anyway, this festival was nuts. I had another friend come in to visit, and I normally don't stay out late at all. Like I go to bed early all the time, and that's that. But I did because my friend was in town, and so I got back to my apartment like 1 in the morning, ran into this 15, 16-year-old guy who cornered me in an alley where no one else was around, held me at gunpoint, and was like, what do you got? And I'm like, I don't have much, but it's yours. And then we started talking, and nothing ended up happening. But that was an instance in which fighting and running away wouldn't have gone over well.
Whoa.
Right?
You didn't tell me this story. I was confusing it with another story.
Oh.
What
Well,
was the conversation like?
well, I was like, what do you need? And he's like, anything. And I'm like, are you okay? And then his humanity came out. Because he's young, dude. He's like 15. He didn't want to be having a gun. He's just poor,
Yeah.
probably desperate.
Yep.
And so we reached that point.
That reminds me of a Samurai Champloo episode where there's like this young kid who starts like he starts challenging these like samurai with a knife, and he gets like humiliated, and like they stomp on him and leave. But then another samurai, a more educated, comes up and says to him like, you better be fucking careful waving those things around, because he had a sword, and he says, because once you start waving those things around, you know, they have a right to kill you, essentially. Like you're playing with death now. And I think maybe that boy who was trying to rob you essentially kind of realized that it's like, oh, this ain't play school toys anymore. Like if I'm messing around with these things, there could be very real consequences.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not some idiot gringo going there to get drunk and, poke young women. Like, I lived there, and I knew people in that neighborhood, and I told him that, and that's when he went away. Right?
Well
There's
done.
that social, like, uh-oh,
Well
this
done.
isn't just some dude. So, if you're gonna be in Latin America, just learn Spanish, for God's sakes. Like, just find a Latina girlfriend, and do a language exchange. That's step 0.
Not all of us are as adept at finding Latina girlfriends as you, Eric.
No, that's not true. It's just exposure and like the basics of the
Having
language.
big, strong muscles and
Well, so are you. I mean, you've
Yeah,
got more hair than I
I know,
do.
but I'm
So
speaking on behalf of the hideous people that watch us.
I hope. I don't think. I don't know who's watching us.
uh,
So, are you hideous? Why?
um,
Go to the gym.
comment,
Anyway.
comment, subscribe below if you're one of the hideous people
Oh,
watching.
right. We haven't been doing our YouTube sound bites to
Yeah,
get
make
boosted
sure
in
to
the
like,
algorithm.
comment, subscribe, and follow for more. Hey, Eric, what's going on?
Hey, Zach. I
Uh,
feel like this has been a great convo, man.
yeah.
Follow us if you got any value out of this content.
Oh, oh, follow
Anyway,
sovereignty.
that's freeze.
Okay.
So flight, that's what's left.
I
You
don't.
leave.
Yeah. And that's what you did, and
And
that's
that's
what
what,
you do a lot. That is,
well, I move around, you know.
yes.
But this was different because it was like, okay, what, how do you get residency? How can you legally stay in a country that never required COVID tests nor proof of vaccination to enter throughout the whole pandemic?
Yeah.
And Mexico is one of maybe, I
And
don't
then,
know, five.
yeah, and it's interesting how these things manifest, how these like fears manifest, because it's like here, you know, Denver wasn't that bad, but in like places like New York, you know, it was city policy that you not even not even up to the restaurants, but that you were not allowed to enter a restaurant without presenting your vaccination certification. And then and things like that never happened in Mexico. Um,
Never.
and yet, when it ended here, it just kind of poof vanished. And yet, in Mexico, the habitual mask wearing and expectation of mask wearing persisted way longer than it did
Oh,
here.
it's
So
still
it's like,
there
oh my God, really? That's
today.
yeah,
Well, in Mexico City, and like there's 20 million people, and it's dense and kind of stinky, but very cool.
yeah.
So
Isn't that
I don't
interesting?
know.
How things manifest, where it's like it was way more extreme here, but it was more persistent there,
Yeah,
and
in
it's
some places, yeah, like, but that's kind of the case in cities, right? I mean, I still see people walking around here with masks
I see
on,
people
and
here with masks here and there. Um,
but in rural areas, it's like never.
yeah, yeah, correct.
Like, what are you doing? Are you
Um,
are you ill?
signaling, you know, signaling.
You're signaling.
I think it also has a lot to do with like anxieties, and I think
Well, it's coverage, right? It's like a diaper. It's like just in case, you know? Like
yes, I guess I don't know. I don't really talk to those people. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna act like a mind reader. I'd rather just have conversations with interesting, you know, sane people
fair enough.
about sovereignty. Um, I think you were on a thought. I feel like you were on a train of thought. We kind of got sidetracked.
Oh, just there's
Oh,
fight, freeze, flight.
we were
And
well. We were. I think we were talking about how you move around, and how I think like you value motion, ability to move, and like how you've learned to be strategic and best use like your ability to move to your advantage, you know. And I guess I think that's a good interesting subject, because I think you're good at that, and it's a thing that very few people are good at, is being willing to go, being willing to say, okay, I'm not tolerating this. um I'm just gonna go.
As you said previously, being able to say no,
Right.
right?
It's kind of the same thing in a different form, in a different like. It's going is the move is the equivalent of saying no to a place with your feet as opposed to
Yeah.
your voice. Um, do you want to talk about your like nomad capitalist kind of philosophy and how you have intentions to kind of establish residencies? And I know you've talked about Greece or Italy or other places.
Yes, but not any specifics, but just this idea because like the the close friends that I care about are all worried about the way that the United States and the world is headed, largely
Yes,
speaking.
I think it is an especially pertinent subject. I meant to say this early on, but I think sovereignty is an especially pertinent subject right now because it just feels increasingly like more and more people are feeling like the doors are closing in
Yeah,
and that they don't know what to do. They feel more and more like their options are shrinking.
which is completely valid
Mm-hmm.
because we shut down the economy and we don't need to list out all the reasons. Maybe we can do that
Yeah,
another
we,
time.
we we economically deprived millions of people and economically rewarded the people who were responsible for economically depriving millions of people. And so, of course, they, it's operant conditioning. They learned, oh, that I got all kinds of money for that. I got all kinds of power. I was handsomely rewarded for that. So, like, how do I do it again? And I think people are all like feeling like the next the next thing is just around the corner, and what are we going to do? How are we going to be prepared for that?
And some people might not know, and so they feel like the walls are closing in around them. And so they're kind of forced to go into freeze of like, I don't know, take my money.
I'm helpless. Yeah, just please don't hurt me any more than you already have. Yeah.
Which is like nothing to be ashamed of because it's like if you don't know what your options are, then that's the obvious survival response. Because all of these are survival responses. They're responses to threat against your life or your bodily integrity, right? If we're
Mm-hmm.
getting down to it, it's like you
And
fight,
I
you
don't think
freeze,
that's hyperbolic because we literally saw mandatory vaccination, not mandatory experimental medical treatment.
right? You have to take the jab. You have to stay inside. It's your bodily autonomy and its
Mm-hmm.
integrity, right? So, like this, yeah, this is not hyperbole.
By the way,
It's
if I think this is clear on YouTube at this point, but if we get this pulled from YouTube, follow us on Rumble.
like, subscribe,
Yeah, like, comment,
share it with
subscribe
your
on Rumble.
friends.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so what are your options? Your options are flight. That's it. That's the option. And so you're not going to fight. And all these gun nuts and these people who are stocking up private militias and it's like, you're not going to take down a SWAT team, first of all. You're not going to take down a police force. You're like, that's just not going to happen because they have millions of other men to fill their shoes if you happen to kill them. So like you're not going to fight this government. There's no way.
Yeah,
It's not
but
going to
I
happen.
think it's also that kind of strategy is coupled with the like living out in the boonies enough that there's just like you've made it economically non-viable enough to persecute you. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
and if it's like there's a ratio there where like the threat you represent to their power versus the economic, you know, viability of actually persecuting you. And if the threat you pose to their power is great enough, then eventually, they'll cough up the resources that it takes. But it's kind of just like maintaining that ratio of being being enough of a, like, being a thorn in the side, but not enough that it becomes imperative for them.
Which is fair. I don't have the money to buy property in the middle of Idaho. I'm
Right,
assuming you
right.
don't either. And most people I know don't. And I'm not willing to live in the middle of Idaho. I have no interest in doing that. So that is an option for sure. But, I live in a city.
I
You live
agree.
in a
Yeah,
city. Most people live in cities because that's where you make money.
true.
Um, so maybe you can escape within the United States, but that's still flight. You're leaving urban centers,
Yeah,
you're
I
leaving.
think I'm just escaping within my delusions of grandeur. To be honest, I don't think about the geography of it so much as the
Well,
philosophy of it.
there's a sentiment, right? It's like
Mhm.
kind of nostalgic, like cabin in the woods, and it's like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, I don't know how to hunt. Do you know how to hunt? Who knows how to
No,
hunt?
not really. And I'm not saying that I'm gonna do that, but I think that can be a viable option.
If you have the means and the
Hmm.
desire, for sure, right? That being said, that strategy
It's not for you.
works best in a nomad capitalist context, which is that of what I think I'd like to share with my friends and the people I care about, which is like get a second residency as soon as humanly possible in a country that you can tolerate living in. Like that's step zero. Because if you can't legally be anywhere else, you are de facto
Subject to the whims of the people fucking
the
torturing
Clintons,
Julian Assange.
I mean, the scum,
The
you
slime,
know?
the Hillary Clintons of the world, the Jeffrey Epsteins,
Yeah,
the the people torturing Julian Assange to death while
you're
they
subject to
while
that.
they endlessly tell you that Vladimir Putin is Hitler and we need to intervene by coincidentally printing $1 trillion and sending it to all these other foreign leaders, not dictators. The people we're fighting are dictators. The people we're emboldening are leaders. And if you question that, you're a racist and a sexist, and yeah, it does make sense to have an ability to escape these people. I mean, I'm, but the way things are moving in terms of like global integration of everything, part of me is wondering like, is it realistic to expect forever to be able to flight? Because there's a one of my favorite YouTubers is Jimmy Dore, and he tells a joke uh, about he has a late friend who tells a joke that he retells on his show, and it's like his friend when asked, hey, if you hate American government so much or if American policy so much, well, why don't you leave? And he says, well, I would, but then I'd be subject to our foreign policy.
Which is true.
So
It's a great point.
I think that yeah, I think that's funny and true, and yeah, it's like I just think maybe it's just a question of having all the cards essentially up your sleeve and being able to implement, knowing when to implement fight, flight, or freeze, to best serve your own sovereignty.
I think flight gives you the most optionality because you could have residency in multiple countries, and depending on how things go, you can be in multiple places, but you have options. Whereas it's like fighting is fighting. It's like to the death. That's what violence is. It's not meant to subdue. It's like I'm going to force you to do this. or you're not going to live. I mean, that's its T loss, right? And freeze is appropriate in certain circumstances. I'm not saying it's not. That's
Mhm.
certainly a card to play. But while you can obtain the ability to leave, and yes, there's foreign policy to consider. So it's like, maybe you don't want to get second residency in Palestine.
Palestine.
I mean,
Oh, that's so grim.
maybe you want to avoid that area. But like Mexico shares a land border with the United States. Its economy is growing. Its currency is becoming more valuable versus the US dollar. More American manufacturing is moving there from China, from COVID. Um, I think it's going to be a global superpower in 20 years or less. And it's like, yeah, can you run away from this forever? This oppressive governance forever? I don't know if that's the right
I don't.
question to ask. It's
I don't.
like,
Yeah.
can
Well,
you carve out
to me, it's
enough
not.
space to make the next move?
Yeah. To me, it's not even like the government so much as like this. It's an energy. It's a force. Like the government will come and go, but this entity, this energy will always kind of be. And how do we I don't think it can be extinguished entirely, but how do we like mitigate it?
I think that's another subject to talk about in another episode, but like the cliff notes are maximize your sovereignty and pursue leisure. Like
Pursue
carve
leisure.
out carve out the space in your life so that you can like practice dancing and like have the time to get coffee or a beer with your Mexican buddies and like actually be there doing that. I think that's how you combat that energy.
That seems like a pretty good note to end on. Do you think that we should wrap it up?
Unless there's anything else you'd like to say.
Um, I had a nice leisurely day. We haven't talked much. I think in future, maybe next episode, maybe just sometime in the future, like it'd be nice to at some point just talk literally about like our lives. I mean, we always kind of do, or just talk, be like, hey, today I went and had. Well, I mean, today I went to Cheeseman Park, and I played volleyball, and then I played chess, and I slacklined a bit, and took some pictures of a friend who was out there with his bird, and
What kind of bird?
a little parrot, like a little, like that big, and it's white. I got the pictures on my Instagram. I'll send them to you.
Please.
Um, so I think I exercised those principles today. It was
Which is
sunny. It was
beautiful.
warm. It was. Thank God for. Oh God. I was about to say climate change, and then I was like, oh God, we're gonna get into the. Then we have to get into the nitty gritty of that.
Which we will.
Oh yeah, you're gonna hear how much we care about about climate change at
Well,
some
I
point.
do, but
Yes, but not in the way you would. That's it. Yes, but not in the
not in
way.
the CO2,
Not in
the
the way
cow
you
fart.
expect. Not in the
Um,
cow farts.
Going back to your suggestion, to talk about our personal lives. I don't maintain social media accounts outside of Facebook for Marketplace and to see your posts and events. I don't want to contentify my life. If you want to do that, like by all means, I'd rather just talk about ideas and tactics because um, yeah, I mean, I just don't communicate online that way. But I'd love to hear how your day went. Every
Well,
episode.
I guess you pretty much heard it. But I think that's a good episode.
I think so too.
All right. Well, see you next
It's been
time.
a pleasure.
Cheers.
Salud.